What's up, guys? Welcome back to Malt Mondays. Now, this week I'm looking at Highland Park's most recent release, and that is the Valkyrie. So, it was released to replace the Dark Origins, and it's the first of a three-part series. I think the next one's going to be called Vulcan or something like that. So it's going to be kind of like these special editions. And I'm not sure if each one's only going to run for a year or 2 years, but they're trying to kind of do like a Glenmorangie private edition sort of thing. And they're doing it with these non-age statement releases. So the first one is the Valkyrie, and this is released right alongside the Highland Park Magnus, which is $40, 40% ABV. I believe American Sherry Oak. So I may be picking up that one to review as well. But I wanted to pick up this one because the Dark Origins is one of my favorites. I know I haven't reviewed it here on this channel, but it's a good whiskey, and it's priced right at $80, right where this one is. So this is the replacement for that, and we're going to see how it tastes. Now, right away, I have some problems with Highland Park's new approach. So, they've got this really heavy, thick glass bottle. The design of it's beautiful. Just this bottle looks awesome. The sleek, shiny black really looks nice. The presentation and everything's great. It's bottled at 45.9% ABV, which is fantastic. There's no coloring added, just like there's no coloring added to any Highland Parks. So I have no problem with any of that. What I do have a problem with is Highland Park doubling and tripling down on their Norse mythology theme. The box that this comes in, they've made a big deal about partnering with Jim Lingvold, who's a Viking descent designer who lives in Denmark. And, so one side of the box is all about Jim Lingvold, who designed their bottles and stuff. That's fine. But most of what they're talking about Jim Lingvold is that he's a Viking and a real Viking, and he took inspiration from the Vikings. And then the entire back of this box doesn't say anything about whiskey. I don't think it even has the word whiskey on the back anywhere. And that's like 500 words. This is all just a story about Vikings and Valkyries and Odin and Ragnarok. Interesting to read, of course, but it's fine to market your whiskey and have a story with it. I kind of like that Highland Park does that, but they're going overboard. At the end of the day, what they're selling you is more of the story than the whiskey, and that, or at least they're trying to me. And then we get this small little section on the side that's actually about the whiskey. So we're not going to read those yet. We're going to go ahead and taste it first. And probably my favorite thing about this bottle, besides the design, is it's got this cool new screw top cork. So I'm not sure if you can see it, but there's actually a screw top design embedded with the cork. So the cork goes in and then screws on, which is cool. Now, this is natural coloring, which is nice, and screw close. So it's a nice color. That means, it's definitely got some age to it. This is actually about the exact same color as the Bruichladdich Classic Laddie, which is 8 to 10 years old. So we can guess that this is around 10 years old, and probably some up to 15 years old at the most. Some components of it. But the thing that has me a little bit worried about this is that the Valkyrie is ex-bourbon barrels and ex-sherry, ex-American sherry oak barrels. So Highland Park, I'm not really sure why they're going for this ex-bourbon barrel. I know this is a special release, but go on their website, look at their 5 tenets of whiskey, and one of the tenets is sherry casks from Spain. And here we have a whiskey that has no sherry cask from Spain. I mean, they say on their website, they're like, we strongly believe in the 5 pillars of good whiskey, and one of those pillars is Spanish sherry casks. So, I'm not really sure, other than the fact that ex-bourbon barrels are cheaper, and at the end of the day, I think Highland Park, like many others, like Macallan, are realizing there's not enough good sherry casks to go around. They need to make some whiskey with ex-bourbon barrels. But it's a little unusual when so much of their brand identity is in sherry casks. Anyway, on the nose. So I really like the nose on this one. It's 45.9% ABV, and despite that, I don't really smell alcohol at all. What I smell is lemon, vanilla custard, spices, peatiness, definitely peatiness. It's certainly more smoky than your standard Highland Parks. This is using 50% peated barley as opposed to 25% of the barley being peated for most Highland Parks. So this is a good bit smokier, but it still has that floral note, that heathery note that Highland Park gets. But this smells, to me, because of the ex-bourbon barrels, and because of the extra peatiness, I would guess this was from Iowa. I would not guess this was Highland Park. This doesn't really smell like Highland Park to me. And there's definitely some spice in there, or some herbaceous notes. So we're going to see how it tastes. So it's really, really nice, creamy whiskey from that high proof. It goes vanilla and lemon a little bit up front, but then you get a really strong spice, almost like a ginger. And then the peat really dries out your mouth, and there's even some dark chocolate in there as well. But the problem I have with it is it's not like nice dark chocolate. It's kind of like a dark chocolate that's been sitting out on the counter for a week. It's a little too bitter, and there's a little bit of like a metallic kind of note to it that indicates this is fairly young. There's a little bit of like an off note to it. I don't know. I think if this was $65 or $70, I'd be fine with it. I would actually think it was a good replacement for the Dark Origins. The problem is this is $80, $85. And at that price point, you're sitting right underneath Lagavulin 16-year-old, which is an infinitely better whiskey. You're sitting right next to the Ardbeg Ugadal, which I kind of feel like this is trying to mimic that with upping the peat level, having a little bit of sherryness in there, but I don't think this is quite as good as the Ugadal. Now, I will say, when I wrote down my tasting notes last night, and I've had several glasses of this, since I bought the bottle, I try never to review something on a first impression, and this is why. When I wrote down my tasting notes last night, I gave this a really bad score. I thought it was really bitter, really astringent. I hated it. I actually poured it back in the bottle. I was like, oh, this is terrible. And I gave it a C minus. A C for it being meh whiskey, or okay, and then a minus for being way too expensive. But the thing is, your palate is always changing. And, last night when I tasted this, I had sweeter food, a couple hours before. And believe it or not, that does impact your palate. So that was a little bit of a mistake on my part, because as I'm tasting this now, I'm getting a lot of the same notes. Actually, there's a little bit of salty, almost like a salty bacon kind of note with the smoke. That's really interesting. But you get There's just something different about coming at it with a completely cleansed palate. So when I do my reviews, I usually try to do them early in the day when I've just woken up. I haven't eaten anything. I'm only drinking a little bit, but I haven't eaten anything, so I haven't ruined my palate with anything. It's totally clean. And because of that, this morning I actually, I can tell that it's not overly tannic. It's not too dry. It's not too smoky. Last night I gave it a really bad score, but on the other occasions that I've had it, I've liked it a good bit more. So I'm going to go with a B- on this. I think it's good whiskey, but I think it costs $15 too much, $15 to $20 too much. So if you're finding this at close to $100 or American, you're paying way too much for it for a new release, just because it may be a little bit harder to find. But at $80, this is okay. I would still recommend you try it before you buy it. I don't think this is as good as the Dark Origins. I don't think this is as good as Ardbeg Ugadal, but try it. It's definitely worth trying, and if you find it a little bit cheaper than that, pick it up. There's nothing wrong with it. It's good whiskey. I think it's got too much competition that is better than this. So, as always, leave a comment down below. Let me know what you think of the Highland Park Valkyrie, if you're planning to buy a bottle or not. And stay tuned for next week. I will have another review for you. Thanks for watching.